Before we get started, just a reminder that you can find all of my available rental properties on my website at marcguzman.com. If you own investment property, click on the Owner Services section to see our complete list of services. This episode and wine tasting is sponsored by Lenny Clark with Prime Lending. Lenny Clark is a loan officer specializing in residential home lending. He communicates with you every step of the way, and his honesty sets him apart from the rest. He's able to think outside of the box due to his experience and is able to tailor a loan program to fit your needs. If you can't qualify just yet, not a problem. He will let you know what you need to do in order to be ready. Lanny is also backed by Prime Lending, which is one of the biggest and fastest growing lending banks in the nation. They have simplified the home lending process down to 5 steps. And FYI, step number 5 is to relax and enjoy your new home. So contact Lenny Clark today at 510-964-0620. In today's world, film has become one of the most useful ways of portraying a story or message. Fay Darmawi, our guest today, uses film for those exact purposes, partially through the San Francisco Urban Film Fest. The Urban Film Fest brings filmmakers together to tell stories and share messages that aim to bring light to social and societal issues in San Francisco, while also seeking to showcase San Francisco's beauty and diversity. Today, Fay joins us over the phone to talk about the SF Urban Film Fest, as well as her quest to find the solution to affordable housing in the city by the Bay. So, Fay.
Okay.
Fay, thank you for being on the podcast.
You're welcome. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, of course. I appreciate it, and I'm excited to get into this conversation here. So one thing I like to ask my guests on the show is, what has your attention now? It could be a book, it could be music, it could be politics, something in the media, something locally, a restaurant. What has your attention now?
Well, the same thing that has my attention for the past 30 years, which is affordable housing. Are you looking for something that has to do with popular culture?
It can be anything. Really, I just like to ask my guests, what has your specific attention? For some people, it's what they're involved in, and that just consumes everything about them. And with others, they have a hobby or passion on the side that they really enjoy.
Yeah, so I'm one of those people where I try to align everything together, and my profession is affordable housing finance, and my passion is trying to demystify what that is through the film festival. So basically, those two things consume me.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and jump into that and talk about it, because you're saying affordable housing finance. What does that really entail? Because I think for most people, they've heard of affordable housing, but what's the finance aspect to it?
The finance aspect to it is how affordable housing development is funded. As you know, housing is very expensive. As a buyer and as a renter, you've experienced it. Mm-hmm. But that's because it's very expensive to build as well. And because it takes a lot of time and money to build real estate, including housing, you need lots and lots of capital. And that means capital as in money from banks and investors.
Yeah, and
so that's what finance is.
Yeah,
real estate is financed.
yeah, and the cost of development is huge these days because the cost of construction's gone up, and I believe in construction there's a huge shortage of labor too. And I've spoken to a few plumbers where they've had to fly plumbers from other states into California simply to keep up with the current jobs available. And that's not even taking into account new developments that some people are trying to put together, right?
Correct. Yeah, labor is a huge problem, mostly because, again, it's very expensive for anyone to live here, including people who work in construction.
So are most of your clients that you're dealing with strictly developers and cities that are looking to put together affordable housing?
No, I have a even smaller niche. I consult financial institutions that finance affordable housing. So even one more step removed.
Okay, so
These deals are super complex, and every one of them is kind of like a boutique transaction. Very inefficient.
okay.
I just have to put that out there. And that's part of the crisis. You know, on the one hand, we have the system in the U.S. where it's a public-private partnership where you have public sector financing and private sector financing put together into these complex transactions. On the one hand, you have the good thing about that is that you have market incentives to push these deals along. On the other hand, you don't have scale. Like if you had social housing like in Europe, where it's the central government who builds all the housing, they can do it, you know, in mass. I guess Europe doesn't do it very much anymore. I think Hong Kong or Singapore would be the equivalent nowadays if you wanted to talk about social housing. For example, in Singapore, 80 to 90% of the population lives in social housing. So you don't have a homeless population there. We have a long history of badly managed social housing. It's called public housing. And I think that's part of the reason why we don't have social or federally supported housing very much anymore. And partially it's because Americans believe in the free market more than the government doing good things. Mm-hmm. But we can talk about that if you want.
Yeah, I think that's a whole nother debate in itself, right? I mean, that's one thing that I've had similar discussion to with some people here on the podcast, because one subsection of the podcast is called Highest and Best, where I talk with other real estate professionals on the housing market and what's going on. And one of the biggest issues, if not the biggest issue in California, is affordable housing, whether it's renting or whether it's purchasing. And many people agree that we need to build more, we need to increase the supply, but then you get into various problems. You have the NIMBYs, the not in my backyard people, and then you also have the side effect of, well, if you build a lot more housing, the values will, supply and demand will drop in the end if it exceeds the amount of demand. So it's one of those very interesting conversations. At what point do we as a society say, hey, look, we need affordable housing regardless of, our equity, our values, our net worth. We need to just simply build housing, get housing out there, make sure it's affordable. And it's one of those balancing acts that as a society we need to figure out.
I totally agree. And there's a huge segment of the population, and this population segment is getting bigger and bigger, that can't really risk the effects of the open marketplace. They just need shelter as a human right. That's it, forever, their entire life.
Yeah, it's a very interesting conversation, because if you look at, well, what would be the basic human rights someone would need, you're talking about, well, you need food, you need housing, and you need healthcare, right? Those would be the big three. And, I think at this point, with the crisis being so big, we really have to look outside the box and look at different solutions of what we can do to really fix the problem. But I think what it seems like a lot of people, and Gavin Newsom is, he actually ran his campaign on it, is to build more housing. We'll see if he's really going to get close to his goal of 500,000 units per year.
I think that's a lofty goal, and I'm very happy that he has kicked off his governorship on housing. It's been a long time. Jerry Brown has never been very good at that, especially affordable housing. Jerry Brown is very Republican in a sense in terms of housing. He really really believed in the trickle-down theory of housing. And I think Gavin is a lot more sophisticated in his understanding of affordable housing, which is that there's a segment of the market that requires subsidized housing because these folks will never earn enough money to pay for rent. And the rent has to be very low to them, and the rent will never support private debt that's required to build it. So you need to have public sector subsidy in these developments. And that's the kind of transactions that I work on. So that's like the weedy part of my life, but the sort of more abstract, conceptual, movement building stuff that I do is the SF Urban Film Fest. And I said earlier how those things are the same thing to me in my mind. And the way that it's the same thing is that we want to get to the stories and myths that is the bedrock of American culture to move policy along. So our theory is that social change happens at the political level after society decides what its values are. And I mean, I've been espousing very kind of radical values. And there's a lot of people who don't share my values but what we want to do is at the SF Urban Film Fest is create a platform where we can talk about all our different mindsets, the way we perceive other people, the way we conceive where society is going forward, how society should go forward. And the best way to talk about values is through stories, basically, basic personal stories about how we live as human beings, as families, as sisters, as brothers, as neighbors. How do we conduct ourselves? What is the vision of how we relate to each other in a city? That's the bedrock of the SF Urban Film Fest. And from there, we can talk about how those specific values translate into specific programs and projects. The problem with the way we do urban planning and housing now is that we do it the opposite. We use a bricks and mortar strategy to talk about values. It's like backwards. So that's why I started the film festival, to start from culture outwards.
I really like that too, because one of my favorite quotes of all time from it was actually I believe it was Gary Vaynerchuk, who's a marketing genius. People don't buy facts; people buy stories, and that's one thing that has always stuck with me, is that you could tell people all day long about, hey, housing affordability is a crisis. Here are the facts, and only a very small percentage are really going to understand it. And at the end of the day, it really doesn't move the needle. But you start telling people stories and showing people how it really affects other people and themselves. Now it's very compelling, because now you have emotions. Now you have people relating to themselves, to their mother, their father, their relatives, their best friends. And now it becomes
and even strangers.
Exactly.
So we did this event on Friday using what we call live VR, live virtual reality. It's a performance spoken word piece using VR technology, and I'll explain how that works. And what it is a collaboration between a person who has gone through a crisis and an artist. So the artist filmmaker helps tell the story of this woman, and she is up on stage wearing VR glasses, and she is watching herself on her VR glasses, her own story that's at the same time being projected on the screen, so that the audience is watching her narrate her own life. So she's wearing VR glasses, and she's basically looking at herself going through the crisis that she went through, and is now in recovery at a comprehensive supportive housing residential development in the Tenderloin. So if I if I started the story about this residential development in the Tenderloin and how we built it, no one would care. But what we're doing is starting with her story about how she lost her part of her family because of her addiction, and how this residential care facility is helping her regain herself and her family. And with VR storytelling, you can feel a lot more empathetic, because she is basically going through her life in real time in front of you. And so I'm really keen on using cutting edge storytelling techniques to get us to where we need to in terms of a city to share common experiences with each other.
Yeah, that's a very interesting technique. I've never heard of that type of VR experience in storytelling. So that's very unique. Now, how long has the festival been around for?
It's been around for 5 years, if you can believe it.
Oh, congratulations.
And it's 100% volunteer run, if you can believe that.
Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing.
Thank you.
So what was the original goal when you started this film festival? Was it really just to educate people on affordable housing and connect the stories?
Affordable housing and urban planning in general. You can't talk about housing without urban planning, without transportation, about how people live in communities. So I expanded it to empowering folks to become agents of their own change in cities through storytelling.
Are there other genres at the film festival, or is that the main focus?
Nope. Only urban stories, only urban issues.
And when is the festival usually held every year?
It's usually held the week before Thanksgiving, between Veterans Day and Thanksgiving. But we had to postpone 4 events from this last November because of the campfire and the bad air quality. We postponed it to this week.
Okay, so it's happening this week. And what are some of the films that have your attention right now?
I'm waiting for this amazing film called The Public to come out. I think it's coming out in April. It's about a public library, actually, and it's narrative / thriller. Emilio Estevez is the executive producer and actor, and he is the central character. He's the head librarian of this downtown public library, and it's about the crisis that a bunch of people have who use the library, homeless folks, young families. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to that because it just seems like it will be a very exciting way to experience what probably most librarians face every day. You know, it helps us empathize with with the people who serve us every day. I think we just take it for granted that public sector folks who prop up the city for us, they're kind of invisible to us. We just take them for granted, and all we do is complain about them. But I think this movie will shed light on what they have to face every day. And even the SFPL, the San Francisco Public Library System, hires social workers exactly for this reason, which is to counsel the homeless folks who hang out in libraries. And you've seen them. I mean, you've gone to a public library or even walked by. They're basically our area of last resort. And it's interesting because the library is also where us as a society, we hold all our hopes and dreams in those books and stories, right?
Yeah.
So what does it tell us about us?
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. I haven't. Yeah, I guess with libraries, with less and less people going to libraries in general, they become a place where people can take shelter in, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't think it's true though that people are going to libraries less and less. I think people are going to libraries for different reasons. Maybe less for borrowing books, but they definitely go there for movies. They go there for getting on the computer. They go there for workshops. They go there to see their friends. They go there for story time for their children. So, and then a couple of advanced libraries have maker labs. So yes, I think the idea that a library is only a a repository of books is like from the 50s. Its libraries are just more than that. I don't know actually the exact numbers of library attendance, but I don't think they're down.
And then, so how many films do you typically have at the Urban Festival?
uh, 40-ish.
Wow. And that these are not all the films that are submitted to you. I mean, I'm sure you
No,
have
we
to
got
go.
1,300 submissions.
Wow. That's a lot of movies. How do you filter through all of them to narrow
I
it down to
know.
40?
Yeah, we have a curation team. They're also our producers. They're also volunteers. It's 5 of us. So it's me plus 4 other producers. And all of us have full-time jobs, so we do this after work and on the weekends.
Wow, that's incredible. So,
It's incredible.
yeah, I mean, what do you look for in a film? I mean, how do you decide what gets into the actual final uh, roster of films to be shown?
Yeah, so it has to like have an emotional resonance with us, and really good production value, and it has to be about something that happens in a city.
That
So
happens in any city or the city of San Francisco?
any city, any city. I mean, last year, I mean, this season that we're still in, the 5th season, I don't know. I think maybe only like 2 or 3 films are about the U.S. We had submissions from like 40 different countries.
Wow, that's incredible. And then where's
Yeah,
the film festival held?
we. This is also another wild thing that we do, which is we hold it at different venues, and we pick the venue relative to the theme of the event at the venue. It's very like meta, because we want people to connect the place that they're in with the things that we're talking about. So, for example, we had a event at the Tenderloin Museum, not this season, but for the 4th annual, and we screened films about the Tenderloin, including one that was made in 1966 that this director, pretty famous director, had in his shoebox in his closet.
Wow.
And yeah. Yeah, it's fascinating because the Tenderloin, even in the 60s, was a place for outcasts. So it was a place for outcasts, like basically like men from suburbs would come in to the Tenderloin. That's what it was. You know, before the sexual liberation movements, when homosexuality was, basically banned all over this country. For the San Francisco, it was the Tenderloin, and the narrative of like free love and everything that were happening in like the hippie culture stuff on the hate with heteronormal white people sort of like expressing themselves. Well, the opposite was happening in the Tenderloin, where it was basically a drug den for people who were ostracized from society. So it was interesting, like reality check on the narrative of San Francisco as a city where we see that the mainstream narrative of the hippie culture, and then like this tenderloin narrative that no one talks about.
Hmm.
And that happened at the same time.
How involved does the city and the local community get in with the festival?
I don't know how you define local community. So, one of our producers is actually an employee of SF Planning. He just loves film and he really believes in our mission.
That's great to see when you have people working with the city really getting involved that way.
Yeah. So we get funded a little bit by the Metropolitan Transportation Commission. You know, those folks who take your money at the tolls.
Mm-hmm. And then what are the other ways you raise money? I would assume ticket sales and donations.
And donations. We are also starting to apply for grants.
If someone was interested in donating, what's the best way for them to do it?
Contact me.
And where can they contact you?
I can be reached at sfurbanfilmfest@gmail.com. The email address is also on our website, which is www.sfurbanfilmfest.com. So not San Francisco and not festival. So.
Okay. Yeah, we'll go ahead and link that up in the description in case anyone is interested in donating, or I assume they can go to the website to buy tickets there too.
Yes. Unfortunately, we only have one more day of events, which is this Sunday, and they're storytelling workshops. So in addition to film screenings and panel discussions, we also have storytelling workshops, which is basically to add a storytelling tool to the toolbox of urban planners and policymakers so that they become more effective in engaging the general public. I feel like right now urban planning is so opaque, just like housing finance is.
Mm-hmm. You have the new mayor, London Breed, laying out plans for increased affordable housing for teachers and sheltering the homeless. I mean, how do you feel about her attempts to solving affordable housing?
I'm cautiously optimistic. I would like to see her to demand a navigation center in every supervisor district in 12 months.
Now, what would be a navigation center?
So the navigation center is a concept actually the city of San Francisco invented, and a lot of cities are taking up on our lead. The navigation center is a temporary area that allows folks who are lacking in housing and who live on the streets to come in with everything they own, including their dogs and tents, into an area that has open space for them to put down their stuff, put down their houses, put down their tents and everything, and also an area if they want to be in a sheltered area with beds. And third, the most important area is the offices of the social workers who help them get back on their feet and find housing. So initially you can stay for 60 days, but because it's so hard to find housing, a lot of folks have been staying for 12 months. And these navigation centers occupy temporary spaces that are waiting for permanent housing to be built. So There was one in the Mission next to the Armory. That was there for 3 years as the nonprofit was going through entitlements to build permanent housing there. So that navigation center existed for 36 months. And then once the nonprofit housing developer got permits to build permanent housing, that navigation center moved to another temporary area.
Okay,
so the Mission has 3.
So you would like to see one in every neighborhood?
Absolutely. We have homeless people in every neighborhood. Every neighborhood is a community to a community of homeless people. Homeless people have an affinity to neighborhoods just like non-homeless people. Why do we have the right to move them to another neighborhood? I love living in North Beach. Why do I have the right to live in North Beach? But if I was homeless, I wouldn't have the right to live in North Beach. And there are actually homeless people in North Beach who were housed in North Beach before. Would it be fair to move them to the Mission just because that's the only place we have navigation centers? No, they have their entire social network here.
So is that common to see when people are displaced from a neighborhood and they end up homeless to stay homeless in that same neighborhood?
Yes.
And so with the film festival, these are the various issues that you're trying to bring out to light and trying to educate people about. And are there any stories that you can share with us where you've seen how the Urban Film Festival has touched people and made a difference?
Well, I think that the fact that I have groomed 4 producers from just me. So now we have a team of 5 producers who've been working with me for 2 years. We also have 30 volunteers who've been volunteering with us for 5 years. So I think in the sense that people who aren't in urban planning, so 50% of the people who stick with us in terms of volunteer are not urban planners or housing people. So I think yes. And then another way we've affected change is the American Planning Association, which is the professional association that represents urban planners. They recognized me last year. I got some innovator award or something, and they sponsor the workshops to promote culture change in urban planning. So, but in terms of concrete urban policies, no, but that's not what we do. We're not like Spur, where we espouse specific programs or projects. Do you know what Spur is?
No, I've never heard of it.
Okay, Spur is the urban planning think tank in San Francisco. They've been around for 100 years, and they publish policy papers once a month on different urban planning policies. They have offices in San Francisco, San Jose, and Oakland now.
Okay.
So we're not like them, although they helped us launch. We are much more on the arts and culture side. We're trying to bridge storytelling, arts and culture, and urban planning together. So we're much more humanities based. Yeah.
So how can
we touch on people's relational values instead of specific policies? Do you see the difference?
Yeah. So what do we need to do as a society to really encourage more affordable housing?
To not see other people as others, that you, by the grace of luck or bad luck, you could be homeless too. 40% of Americans are $400 away from becoming bankrupt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was an interesting study that came out. I want to say
you could be in a car accident today. Yeah.
Yeah.
and you wouldn't be able to pay your bills, what would happen?
Yeah, there was a study that came out about 6 months ago that the main question of the study was how many Americans have even $300 to their name that they can give at this moment for any reason, including credit card access. And I want to say about 60% was no, they did not have $300. So even a car accident or something could be crucial to most Americans.
Yeah. So maybe the numbers increased since the last time I quoted read it. It was in Atlantic Monthly last year, I think. So yeah, so we're all of us basically are what $300-$400 away from being homeless. 60% of us or whatever.
Hmm. Yeah, I think with this government shutdown that we recently saw was a big eye opener to some people to really show that how many Americans are affected with simply one or two paychecks not coming into their bank account.
Yeah, exactly. And also maybe we should reconsider the American dream.
How so?
Um, the white picket fence and the 2.5 kids and the 1.5 cars and that kind of thing.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and I think you're starting to see some of that change a little bit. You see a lot of reports coming out how millennials in general view the world differently than baby boomers did, right? And I think
Hmm.
that typical American dream comes from the baby boomer generation after World War II happened, and there was a big economic boom, and that was essentially the goal. And you saw a lot of development, city developments happen to where, with everyone having easier access to a vehicle, now people were willing to drive farther, farther for access to things like groceries, medical, entertainment. And so you saw a lot of cities really develop wide as opposed to really focusing on smart and logical urban planning. And now we're starting to see the trend starting to go back to, you know, I do property management, and I it's amazing to see the number of tenants coming in that don't have cars because they don't want cars. They want to be close to BART. They have bicycles. They want to be close to other sources of public transportation because, uh, you know, they want to be close to everything. Is what
That's
what
great.
it comes down to.
That's great. That's great. That's great. And then one step from there is, those are all like public assets, and we have to think about how we are taking care of our public assets, and try to be analytical and maybe choose things that are maybe less convenient, but maybe contribute to the public good. So that we become, a little bit less individualistic and more communal.
Hmm.
Not like going overboard or anything, but definitely our individualism, our sort of like myth of self-determination needs to be tempered a little bit with the reality is that we're all in it together, and that your success is basically because of other people helping you along the way, and to recognize that as reality.
Yeah, exactly. No, I'm in total agreement with you, and we're. I feel like we're starting to see some of that conversation come to light, where we're noticing. I mean, this just the affordability crisis that we have here in California is really making a lot of people talk. And even if, like, someone like Gavin Newsom, if he's not able to build 500,000 units per year, he's at least putting it in the spotlight. And he just filed a lawsuit against a city down in Southern California for not
Yeah, Huntington
allowing.
Beach.
Yeah, and so I think that's a good first step, and he's really bringing it to light, which is I think a good thing. There are a lot of people that I've come across that are they don't pay attention to the real estate market that much, and so for a lot of them, they're just completely ignorant to what's really going on. They just, it's never just come across because they might be financially okay and sitting in their 3-bedroom 2-bath with a white picket fence, right? And so for them, it's been okay, but I think we're starting to see a lot of this come to light. And I think we're going to see some good change coming up in the next, 5 to 10 years. And
God, I hope so.
yeah, and I mean, it's getting to a point where you're going to have the majority of the people living in California as renters, and not because they all want to be renters. It's because they have to be, because even to purchase a home is out of their league. I mean, there was a study that just came out a few weeks ago where one of the association realtors basically did a survey asking millennials, are you interested in buying a house? And many of them said yes. And they said, and then next follow-up question was, how long do you think you need to save up money for a down payment? And many of them said 10 or more years. And that just shows how crazy even to buy it can be in California, is the fact that people will have to save money for over 10 years simply for a down payment. It's not even to buy the entire home cash. It's just for the down payment. And so, yeah, the numbers just simply don't work out. And we're starting to see the effects of that. And I think we're going to start seeing a lot of policy changes coming up soon to swing the pendulum to the other side. So I think it's amazing what you're doing and what many organizations are doing to really bring out the stories of affordable housing and the struggles that real life people are going through, and just educating the public on what's really happening and ways we can solve it. So
thank you.
Yeah, so it's amazing what you all are doing with the film festival. So of the film festival, what's your favorite part of the film festival every year?
The favorite part of the film festival is when somebody comes up to me and says, now I walk through the city and I notice all these things that I never did before. I notice the good things and the bad things, and I know now that I have a role to play in changing that. So just to hear somebody say that to me, which it means that we're doing something right, which is that using film and media and these conversations that we have in the real world helps people see the city in a whole new way and wakes them up.
Yeah. Isn't that something that's amazing when you can live in a city for so long, or even a neighborhood for so long, and be oblivious to certain things, right? It's a weird phenomenon, I think. And then it's really enlightening when, when something or someone exposes that to you.
Yeah, then there's no going back.
Mm-hmm. Now, with the San Francisco Urban Film Festival, what's a goal that you hope to see in the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, I'd like for us to be self-sufficient, meaning we want to hire, pay people instead of it being a volunteer organization. I can't see that as being sustainable. So we'd like to hire an executive director. We also would like to start a film fund. So we'd like to create a film fund and a competition with different themes, because we don't actually see enough films on certain topics like housing. So if we can't just be complaining about that. We can actually do something about it, which is to become executive producers of housing films. Like, wouldn't that be great?
Yeah, it would.
Yeah. And we like to see other cities adopt our film festival program structure. So we're thinking of creating like film festival in a box, like a playbook. Like here's how you start one.
That'd be a great
So
idea.
those those kinds of things. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. In real estate with the Association Realtors at the state level, one thing they wanted to do was encourage more young people in the business to get involved in the association. And so one of the things they did, and actually not just at the state level, but at the national level, they created a young professionals network, and they created basically a playbook called How to YPN. And they hold workshops all over the nation, basically teaching local associations and realtor groups on how to create their own YPN, their own young professionals network. And it's gained a lot of success. So I would imagine if you did something like that, where you created a How to Urban Film Festival and put that out there, I'm sure a lot of cities would pick that up, because it's a very unique way to tell the story of affordable housing.
Yeah. I mean, it wouldn't be a city that would pick it up. It would be like a bunch of passionate young people, probably some planners, probably some filmmakers who decided that's what they want to do. It's not that easy, because it takes a lot of time, and it takes you the whole year to put something on for a week. So, somebody would have to be like really kind of crazy like me to like start something like that. But yeah, I mean, I think it would be very effective. We'd love to have start a federation of urban film fests all over the world. That would be awesome. There's a model for that, which is the Environmental Film Fest Federation. Yeah, the environmental movement has their own film festivals. So, I mean, we should have an urbanist movement film festival federation. That would be cool. Share our best practices. Running a film festival is hard, but it's not rocket science,
Yeah, it's time consuming though.
It's time consuming, but it's not. It's like, here's what you do now, here's what you do next, and this is the form that you use, and this is who you talk to now, and this, you 60 days before you turn on the website, and 30 days before you start the media, crunch, and it's methodical.
Yeah, and then once you're producing many more films for the festival, you can even take those films and enter them into other film festivals to help increase exposure about urban and affordable housing.
Absolutely. Right. We want to be the genre maker.
That's amazing. And so I think it's going to be a great film festival. Now, for the next, I know the last one you had a delay. For the next film festival, is it still going to be right before Thanksgiving?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. But look out for an event in May, and another event in probably early September.
Okay. What's the event in May, and what's the event in September?
They're going to be just freestanding film screening panel discussions. We haven't decided what they're going to be yet, but obviously urban.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, we'll go ahead and look out for that coming up, and I'm sure that'll be on the website. So, Fay, thank you for coming on to the podcast. I really appreciate it. I'm excited for this film festival. I want to come by the next one and check it out. I'll look out for the event in May, and I'm really excited to have you here on the podcast, because I think what you guys are doing is great work, and just really, affordable housing and housing in general is what I deal with and what I've been dealing with, in my business and industry for the last 16 years. And so to really see people shed light on it, I think it's amazing, and I think it's good work. So congratulations on the film festival, and I wish you the best, and excited to see where it goes in the next few years.
Yeah, can hook us up to some philanthropists if you're in the know.
Yeah, I've got a few ideas, so I'll send you an email later.
Okay, cool.
Okay, thank you, Fay.
Thanks, Marc.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. Thank you to our producer, Sam Lubman. Please subscribe, like, comment, and share the podcast. Remember, you can listen to the podcast on iTunes, Podbean, iHeartRadio, Google Play, SoundCloud, and anywhere else you listen to podcasts. For more information on my business as a property manager and real estate team, go visit my website at marcguzman.com. I really want to thank all of you for listening. It means the world to me, and I hope today's episode provides you value in your day-to-day life. I created this podcast to help showcase the many great people that live in this world and help share some knowledge that I've learned along the way in life. Again, thank you for listening. Check out our sponsors, and I'll catch you on the next episode.